How do I just start helping myself get to that next layer of really understanding myself a bit better?
Start with strengths, and a really nice way to explore strengths is write down 3 of your proudest professional achievements.
What's going through your mind as you're sitting and listening to someone talk through all these challenges?
In an ideal world, what's going through my mind is exactly what you're saying to me in that moment.
Why is that important to work through those layers in building a personal brand?
Where you want to ultimately get to is that you're really clear, but if you don't do those steps and that work, it's probably not going to feel as comfortable. I started doing a lot of the personal branding work because it was very hard to get people to actually move beyond the do. I'm an accountant, I'm a consultant. But why? What's the value that you add? What makes you different?
Are you feeling lost in your career, or you want to have a greater impact but you don't know where to start? Welcome to Kinda Planned, the podcast where we help you unlock the opportunities that you can't plan for. Through engaging conversations with expert guests, we help you unlock the mindsets, strategies, and tools that you need to build the career of your dreams. So subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Alex Cutterford, and let's take a moment to unlock your next opportunity.
Well, welcome back to Kinda Planned. Today I'm very lucky to have Abbie Boulter joining me. Abbie is my career coach, so we all need someone in our life that's able to help us bounce ideas around and get clear on what we want to do, and Abbie's been that for me the last couple of months. So Abbie, thanks for coming on and having a chat.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
So I'm going to sort of be turning it back on you a little bit today because I found that our time together was very much you listening to me, and I was very grateful for that. But I thought I need to get Abbie on and actually hear some of her thoughts on things, because you did such a good job of making it about me and not you during our coaching sessions.
Oh my gosh, turning it back on me. I just felt my heart go, whew, because how often you don't do the work yourself. I can do it for others. But yeah, this is going to be good.
Yeah. So do you maybe just want to start by introducing yourself, sharing a bit about your career journey and why it is that you do what you do?
Yeah. So I started off in London and then moved to Sydney. My technical background is in marketing, marketing and brand. But I guess the theme that went through everything was I've always been responsible for growing and leading teams. So I've done that across scale up, like the smallest of small businesses, social enterprise, and then large corporates as well. So always in that brand and marketing space, until sort of the role before what I do now, which was about talent and harnessing the power of talent. But through all those different organizations, the thing that I just kept tapping into was the people side. And when you could see the potential power that sat within those teams. And so, yes, I did the technical part of my job during, on the brand and the marketing, but the bit that I loved was how can I play a role in creating environments where people could thrive, where people could understand their strengths and play to their strengths, but then have all that space to grow and trip up and try new things, and to build a culture where it just felt like everyone could be themselves. So I did that through all of those organizations, when it was, if I was building a team from scratch to joining a team of 20, 30 people. That's what got me excited. That's what motivated me. Then I was lucky enough to be part of a team building day in my last organization. And we did an awesome exercise called Ikigai, which is the Japanese reason for being. And it was a tiny piece of a huge day, but it just got us thinking about actually what lights you up, what gives you excitement in the day-to-day. And I landed on mine around being just creating moments that matter. It was, those moments where you can just take a breath, slow down, get out of the busyness of the day to day, and And it sort of sat there at the moment at the middle of this little ikigai piece. And I didn't do anything with it. I didn't think anything about it, but I just put it like a little rumbling in the back of my mind, and it just played around there for a bit. And then I got a phone call from a friend from a long time ago saying that they were looking for someone to join their talent and development sort of learning organization company. Do I believe in karma, fate? No. Do I believe that it was that little rumbling at the back of my mind that was there that made me say yes to that coffee? Yeah, because there was something about going, I think this is one of those moments, and potentially that opportunity to keep doing that for people. So I had the coffee, and that was it. I joined them as a contractor. I learned, I grew, I went back to study, and then I went out on my own as a coach and a facilitator. And that's what I now do. I've got
The
my
rest
own
is
business,
history.
and
Yeah.
the rest is history.
Yeah.
But it was just that moment where I was like, I don't even know what this is, this moments that matter thing, but it just played around and obviously did its magic while I got on with my everyday.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you've just defined the kind of planned career. It is that, the rumblings that you allow this to plant at the back of your mind, that can then be accessed when the opportunity presents itself, and you were there and ready for it because you'd done that work, and you'd seen how all these pieces come together, and you'd worked out where you're at and what you wanted. And it's a good little way to put it, the rumbling at the back of the mind. And you often think those things like aren't meaningful in the sense that it's like, oh, that's just like, a nice idea that you put on the shelf, but it is something that can genuinely come back to play such a huge role in your life and where you end up going, just from this little thing that you discovered in a workshop session. And then you're like, oh, that's an interesting thought, and I'm just going to shelve it there. And you might walk away thinking, oh, I didn't achieve much that day. And then all of a sudden it's like, with hindsight, you can go, oh, well, what a pivotal moment, is having that little light bulb thought.
Yeah. And I talk to my clients about that. It's just having that courage to take an idea somewhere or plant an idea or think a little bit differently. And even though I guess my style of coaching is about like what's next and let's take some action, it's like also be okay to just plant something there and let your subconscious do the work. So I honestly don't think if I hadn't done that exercise that I'd be doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah, just these little moments that just totally change everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at the time doesn't feel like it.
That's it. And I just feel so lucky to do what I do. I love it. And when you love what you do, as you know, like you get so much out of it, and you get to give so much more as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to sort of dive in a little bit to sort of understand, I guess, what it's like being a career coach. And then also then drawing out from that, I know you put a big focus on personal branding, and I'm keen to dive into that. I've had a number of conversations about personal branding, but from the work that I was doing with you, it was a different angle that I've come to it previously, so really keen to unpack it. But as a career coach, and you're sitting there and you're working with me, and the thing that that was really standing out to me, I guess, was just how present you felt with me, and just able to sort of just ask these little questions, but really it was just me sort of verbalizing and you then sort of asking a few little questions here and there. What's going through your mind as you're sitting and listening to someone sort of talk through all these challenges, and maybe there's setbacks that they've had, or these conflicting thoughts and ideas, and they're trying to piece it together? What's going through your mind?
In an ideal world, what's going through my mind is exactly what you're saying to me in that moment. When I started off as a coach, I was probably thinking, oh my goodness, how can I add value right now? What amazing bit of gold can I add? But I quickly realized that that's not what's needed. I'm looking for themes. I'm looking for things that you might keep coming back to without realizing when you're talking. So for you, I probably did a lot less talking than I may do for others, because of the way that you're wired and the way you think already, it was you just needed to be able to talk it through, and then I could help piece those bits together for you. So what I was doing specifically for you was looking for those moments where you would almost light up or your energy would change. I'm like, oh, there's something there that's actually really you've tapped into or you're really excited about. Or if there's themes that are weaving through the conversation, my job and what I get to do is join those dots for you. So that's very much, I guess, what's on my mind is in terms of, that links back to that. Or what if we were to explore this a little bit further? With other people, I might do more of the talking and throw some ideas out there, see how that lands, test that a little bit. It very much depends who I'm working with, but I will just turn up in terms of what that person needs in that moment, and that could be me sitting and holding space, because who gets that?
Does that feel really vulnerable to sort of come almost like not having the game plan laid out in advance because you need to actually first sit with the person, so you can't already preconceive the ideas?
It's like, you know me and how I've done my entire life. If you talk to my parents, I was the person that had to take a lesson before I took a lesson because I had to know how to do it. If I was being coached, and when I have been coached, people definitely pick up on the idea of like to be in control, like some certainty. You don't have that as a coach. When I've got someone who's kicking off with me, and we might put in place a 6 or an 8 week program, we know what we're working towards, and we'll have a rough idea of how we want to get there and where we want to spend our time. But you do not know what someone's going to turn up with when they turn up to a session, because of what's gone on in their day, what's keeping them awake at night, what their headspace is at. And you just need to be able to respond to that. So yeah, I think when you start off, it's probably one of the biggest challenges. But you're going to also have things that come up time and time again where it's a common challenge or something. And so you do, and I share models and I share frameworks, because for some people who like to be able to picture something, it helps. Sometimes you just go where that conversation's going, and it could be as much as being the person. The word that gets used a lot is discombobulated. When people arrive, they're like, I don't know what's going on. I'm discombobulated. There's a lot going on in my mind. And I help bring that together and help to make some sense of that.
Yeah, because the way I am thinking about it, it kind of somehow you, like as in a coach in that moment, needs to find the balance between the people that typically have the confidence to sit and just listen and be willing to then respond to what they're hearing are also the people that have done the work to have deep understanding so that they can sit with that confidence. And it's the insecure person that rushes to an answer because there may be the insecurities driving them to need to show that they have the value, and maybe it's not quite there yet. It's something I've picked up in myself and in others, when you notice when someone rushes to an answer and is suddenly, and you can normally tell by the speed of their voice as to whether it's going to actually have any substance to it. If they're quickly racing and quickly rushing through some words and it's like, hang on, none of this is actually making sense. You're just speaking. But when you do that deep work, but then that means you need to work out, well, what is the right things for me to be spending my time understanding and learning and absorbing that information? And then what are the things where I'm just actually over preparing to try and compensate for my nerves in a moment?
Yeah. And the other thing on that as well is being okay to say, I don't know. Being as a coach, I'm not going to have all of the answers. I'm not there to create a magic solution necessarily. And I actually think there's a really nice moment, and this could be in a coach-coachee relationship or in a meeting room with your team, to hear someone else go, I actually don't know, but can we work that out together, or can we find someone else who can help us work it out? That there is saying it's okay for you to not have all the answers either. So that's definitely something I've learned throughout my career, but then even more as a coach, is in those moments where I'm like, I might be wrong, but what I'm thinking is, or I don't know, let's play with this idea. There's something quite good there.
Yeah. So keen to move that into the personal branding conversation, particularly from that lens, because I think often when people think about their personal brand and how they want to be perceived, and then you feel like in a moment like that where you don't know the answers and things, you think this could damage my personal brand. And so that's where people then start to try and compensate for that and act like they know everything because, they're like, I don't want to lose credibility and all of that sort of thing. So how does someone manage that in the context of their personal brand? Is it going to be damaging to their personal brand? How should they maybe reframe that?
If they've crafted their personal brand as the person who's got all the answers in all the moments, then they've set themselves up to feel that pressure. Personal brand is probably a big, scary word if you haven't done any of the work on it, because it can conjure up this idea of trying to almost create this persona. This is how I show up in those moments. And I think that's really what you're talking about, that it could feel really scary. Like, how do I keep doing this? But actually, personal brand at its best is tapping into, well, actually, who am I? How do I naturally show up anyway? But how do I give myself permission to be consistent in every interaction? So the good times, the bad times, when the pressure's up. And so the work that I do with people is coming from this premise of, well, you've probably got you've got a personal brand already. You've got a reputation. It's simply how others perceive you. But let's get clear yourself on what that is. And so that you can then get a little bit more intentional about just shaping it and tweaking it to be the way you want to show up. But to the question of, the nerves around, what if I don't have all the answers? Is that going to damage my reputation? I actually think, if anything, it's going to strengthen it, because you just come back to your brand. So you come back to, these are my strengths, these are my values, this is how I want to be perceived and seen by others. And if I can just show up as that, then that's what I'm proud of and what I'm happy with. And if there's a moment where I get it wrong, that's okay.
Yeah. Being clear on what your personal brand is gives you the ability to take a whole bunch of pressure off yourself as to what areas you don't operate in, and you don't have to then feel the pressure to operate in all of those areas as well as what you really want in an ideal world.
I mean, just in an ideal world. I mean, think about any of the big brands that we buy from the shops that we go back to time and time again that we trust. It's because we know the promise they're making. We know what we're going to get when we buy an Apple computer, walk into an Apple store, whatever it is. That's what personal brand is. When I have a meeting with Alex, when I have a conversation with Alex, when I do have any moment where I'm in contact with you, I know what to expect. And if that's consistent, then I can trust that. And then you can get that relationship, and professionally, that's where your brand and that reputation then start working really hard for you. But you can't be something for everybody.
So the way that our conversation ended up flowing, and I don't know if this is how it always flows for everyone, but we really started with getting me clear on what is it that I do, and then we sort of moved into what drives me in that space. And then there it was really around, how do I want others to experience me? And then how do we find some ways just to really clearly articulate, and having that language that can then flow out through the way I interact and engage. Why is that important to work through those layers in building a personal brand?
Where you want to ultimately get to is that you're really clear, you're really comfortable, and almost without thinking about it, you're putting it into practice. But if you don't do those steps and that work, it's probably not going to feel as comfortable or as consistent. And I'll just keep going back to that word consistent, because that's ultimately where we want to get to. I start off with the what do you do, because that's a comfortable space to be. When I used to work at a big professional services firm, and it's where I started doing a lot of the personal branding work, because it was very hard to get people to actually move beyond the do. And it started off with job titles. I'm an accountant. I'm a consultant. But why? Or what's the value that you add? What makes you different? And that's where I very first started playing with it. But we start with the what do you do? Because it enables me to see where someone's sitting there. And then that conversation around what drives you is where you start really then tapping in a little bit into people's values. Or, I mentioned earlier when you see someone light up, because it can feel very, is it cerebral, the word? Like it's very academic. I do this is what I'm about. And then you ask that question about what drives me, and they might just go off in a path they weren't even expecting, because potentially no one's asked them that before, or they've never taken that moment to think about it. So yeah, I want to tap into that passion, because that is a huge part of your personal brand.
Yeah, and I think that's why it becomes such a rich conversation, having this convo, because as a society, like that is the only question we ever get to with talking with one another is, what do you do? And then they say what they do, and then they say, oh, what do you do? And they say what they do, and then you move on, and nothing else is said, and we never really get below that surface level. And so when you actually sit in that place and you actually have someone asking you, that's why I think for me it felt like such a like I've been saying since our sessions, I've said it a few times, of a good career coach is better than a therapist, because you actually just sort of like walk away and like, I don't know, whether it's just that you feel more comfortable in yourself because you've just like verbalized a whole bunch of things about yourself that you don't often get the opportunity just to sort of spend 10 minutes talking about why you value something and why you're deeply moved by certain things and that sort of thing. So it's such a rich thing, and like you said before, personal brand, this big sweeping statement, it's either intimidating or it's got the ick. People, it's perceived as social media influencers and all this sort of stuff. I often think about some of these big terms that I use. Networking's another one where people get really lots of different connotations. And I sometimes wonder, should I use different language, or should I just stick with the language and sort of build upon it new meanings for people to be able to look at it from? Because it's kind of a challenge. If you just start using other language, they'll either just interpret it still as that thing, but with the negative, or you can try and sort of rebrand personal branding. So it's always a bit of a dance when you're talking about these big things. But if you can, I do still sit with that language, because I think it does give us a good opportunity to then dig into all the parts that can sit within it. And if someone can get clear on their personal brand just for themselves, the impacts that I can see it having, this for your well-being, your mental health, just as your ability to navigate life and your career and the ups and downs with just a bit more levelness in terms of just being sure of who you are and what you're going to stand to, the core values that are just going to sort of stay thick and thin, whether life's good, life's bad. It's just so powerful. And so it's why I fell in love with career development, really. Having the context of, I'm just trying to work through my career, just allows someone to feel safe that, oh no, like this is a safe environment for me just to talk, because I'm just working towards a career goal. But then all of a sudden along that journey, you get to discover all this stuff about yourself and actually just build such a richer life that goes with it, because you can't separate your career from your life. And so that's why I fell in love with career development, because of all of that.
And it's a moment to work through it with someone who's not family, not your boss, not your teammates, everyone who's got some skin in the game, for everyone who's got maybe perhaps their own little bit of personal agenda. But when you're working with a coach, you just get to speak freely, because they're not going to judge you, and they don't care if you go this direction or this direction. They're just going to help you explore that. And Yeah, it's a space to be curious. It's a space to play. And as you say, if you can put then that sort of the goal or the vision around this is what I want. And for some people, that is such certainty in terms of a job title or a level. But for some people, it's more like an experience. This is just what I want that next bit of my career to be like. I don't even know quite how to picture it right now, but I know what I want it to feel like. And then it becomes this filter for decisions then that come through. A little bit like when I took that coffee to go and have a conversation with the old friend, which moved me into this. It's actually, do you know what? If I run that through the filter of what's important to me and how I want to do life, it's going to support you in all those moments. And that's where I think it's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, so I've been drawing up, so as we were talking and working through things, and I was trying to get clear on my personal brand and my message, and at the same time was rebranding Brand My Career podcast to Kind of Planned. And one of the things I started to develop was a framework to the thoughts that I was having, and I was sort of calling it the decision side of, you have a goal, you take an action. Mm-hmm. That action generates opportunities like, hey, come chat to me about this idea, and you had this thing planted in the back of your head, and that opportunity comes up. You filter those opportunities through your values, and then you decide whether you're going to reassess your goal or maintain it. And round you go on a daily level and on, macro level. You're taking action. It creates opportunities, and you can filter that through your values. And that allows you then to access all these opportunities that come along the way that you never even planned for. But all of a sudden, they become this amazing thing that you can pursue, and it unlocks these opportunities that you could never have planned for. But it comes when you're filtering through your values, not filtering through your goal. Because so many people get caught up, they maybe start with their values, and then they set a goal, and then they filter everything through the goal, and your values get left behind. And what good are your values if you're not actually using them to influence your daily decisions? And I think that's what happens with organizations, right? They put the vision up on the wall. They start with a vision values printed on a wall, and then we all walk off, and it never influences how we actually make a decision.
Oh my gosh. When I'm working with teams, I do a fair bit of work around vision and values and sort of aligning a team around that. And we start off with, when I say the word values, what does it make you feel? And it's that, talk about something that needs a rebrand, or does it? Because I'm like, well, why? And it feels airy-fairy. It feels like something that the people and culture team put them through. It is posters on the back of a toilet door is where we basically get to where values sit for so many organizations, but it's the same with you. But then we start looking at it through the lens of, well, how do values translate to behaviors? And once you get into that behavior, and that's exactly what you were just saying, it's that the way I show it, I'm thinking about that end result, that word, that vision, that goal of how am I day to day? Ben Crow, who is a mindset coach to lots of incredible sports stars, talks about it being the human being, not the human doing. And that needs to be the focus. It's not just what we're doing and that goal, it's, well, how are we being in those moments? And if we can focus in there, then that is your strength in your brand. And the opportunities and the doors open that you were just talking about, you open them for yourself because of that filter. But they're also opened by other people as well, because they start to get a real sense of who you are. One of the biggest things that I've taken away through the work that I've done is an expectation that other people know what you're about, know what you're good at, know what you like, know the roles or the projects that are going to bring out the best in you. And you could have the best manager, the best leader in the world, but they're busy. They're also thinking about themselves, and they're thinking about lots of other people in the team. Make it easy for them to understand what you're good at and where you're going to thrive and the projects you want. And I think that helps people turn personal brand into something that feels a bit showy to something actually meaningful. It actually helps other people help you.
Yeah, it's just about identifying your role and being really clear on it. Me being a typical guy that loves AFL, my mind was just racing straight then to a football team that has really clearly defined roles for their players. And you often hear players talked about it as a role player. It's just someone it's not the glamorous piece. It's just that they have a very specific role, and they're everyone's clear on whose role is what. And those teams are the ones that obviously operate really well. It's no one person doing anything really fancy, but everyone's really clear. And so by doing that work, if you're in a team of people that have all really intentionally built their personal brands, and you've built that team to then complement one another, really magical things are going to happen in that space when you get a team that's working like that. And your personal brands aren't about ego and competing with one another. You're just really clear on the value you bring, what value you don't bring, what are your values that are going to drive how you actually interact with one another. And
and be aware where they can trip you up as well. I mean, values is a beautiful, positive word, and for the most place it is, but you can also over-index on them at times. Like if you've got a value of justice and you're going in to fight and battle on every single thing, you kind of want to be aware of that. Or a value of I don't know, like giving. Are you going to give too much at times? Are you going to say yes to too many things? So also having that awareness as well within the team.
Because I'm wired towards mercy. So I need a justice person, because otherwise I just want to let everyone off. I just want to give a free pass and go, oh, no, but they didn't mean it. Or, no, I can really understand why they're like that. And, I really identify with that. And then someone else is like, no, they're not getting away with that. I don't care what caused that. You can't get away with it just because you had a tough time. Everyone's had a tough time, So you need those balancing things. So, I'm always best paired with a justice person, and then I'll mellow them out a little bit. They'll nudge me on a bit, and together it gets a pretty good mix.
But imagine in a team, if you hadn't had that conversation around values or what matters to you, you could actually just see that as, well, that's the one I don't get on with, or we're always clashing heads. And if conversation only ever stays at what do you do level, that's probably the most likely scenarios. We just don't get on. We conflict. But if you actually work that bit out, well, these are my values, this is what I'm really good at, this is where my pitfalls are, that's a very different conversation. It takes the personal out of it, and suddenly you're actually coming together going, together this is something pretty awesome, and we need both of us here.
I'm thinking of the team members that have the beautiful combination of their challenges, their strong challenges and unrelenting standards. And it's like there's always on to everything. Like anytime, and I can see it in, your poor boss, a boss of a team that's got a bunch of challenges. They're trying to like manage these strong expectations and like the design, and you think, oh, I finally got something that I can say, oh, look, we've done this thing and it's going to be really great. And they're like, yeah, but what about this, this and this? And they're like, oh.
I know.
But they know you need strong emotional intelligence to handle that. But on the flip side, I've always been like, every team needs a challenger. Someone that's always pushing back and never letting everyone get super comfortable and patting ourselves on the back when we actually haven't gotten something right, or we're thinking we're on track and we're missing a whole big piece. So you need a challenger. I often think it could be very hard to have a challenger that's got ultimate power. But when you get a challenger, like if you've got a boss that can bring all the pieces together, and then you get, a really good challenger, and then someone that's a really creative thinker, and then you get someone that's good at trying to make everyone keep peace, that's probably me as well in the dynamics.
I thought it would be.
I'm the middle child peacekeeper. Oh, can't we all just get along? Yeah. So personal brand. So the way I'm summarizing is that personal brand, getting really clear on your personal brand, allows you to really show up as a present team member that can really just fill their part of a team highly effectively, and allows a team to become a whole lot more cohesive and effective when we all get clear on what our personal brand is.
Can you write my website?
Well, this is recorded, so we'll have a transcript so I can send it to you.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
But yes, and what you've just done so succinctly there is taking it away from, yes, it's called personal brand, but why? And it's for the good of the team, for the good of the organization. Yes, it's for your own career, but generally people are in careers for a reason. Like, what's the impact that you want to have? And that doesn't need to be meaning or, saving the world type purpose. It can be. But it's around, once I've got my personal brand, how's the team going to be able to use that? How's the organization going to be able to use that?
And then you can use that to then pitch to your business why they should pay for you to get some business coaching and personal brand development.
Spot on.
So, Abbie, before we wrap up, would you be able to, what's a couple of questions someone could ask themselves? Maybe they're in that place of, okay, I know what I do. How do I just start helping myself get to that next layer of really understanding myself a bit better and what drives me? What are some prompting questions that person could use to explore that?
Yes. Start with strengths. And a really nice way to explore strengths is write down 3 of your proudest professional achievements. And then if you can find someone to talk it through with, talk them through. What is it that you did? Why are you proud? What was the role that you played in that? And as you talk it through, what you're starting to see bubble up are the strengths that absolutely had to be at play for that to happen. And the reason I start with strengths is it's such a foundation of personal brand. But when you do it through those proud professional achievements, what is it I'm really proud of? You've got this evidence bank of, well, I've achieved that and these strengths were at play. So actually I can't deny them, because the beautifully uniquely Australian thing of the tall poppy syndrome makes us want to go, no, that's not important. That's not a strength. Everyone does that. To deny it, but that it means that you're taking that evidence with you of, well, that made me proud. I did this, and that was what was at play. So start there. It's a really nice place to get your strengths. I would then, the question around personal brand be, and you touched on it earlier, what drives you? What motivates you? What is your reason for being in your career? What's that impact, or how do you want other people to experience you? And just be prepared to play with that one. And you're not going to land it immediately. It's not going to be a 1 or 2 words straight away, but just ask that question and then reflect on it at the end of a week. What was that like this week? And then when you can start to, again, it's almost about building up that evidence and taking those moments to reflect on the week, then it starts to feel more real and part of you.
Amazing. Abbie, how can people find you and get in touch with you?
Best place is probably LinkedIn. So Abbie Boulter. It's where I'll share my noodling thoughts that are going on. And I've also got my website, abbieboulter.com as well. But on LinkedIn, we can have a conversation, and that's what I love.
Awesome. Abbie, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Alex.
Thanks for tuning in to Kind of Planned. Subscribe and send this episode to a friend that you think needs to hear it. Or head to my website, www.kindofplan.com.au for free resources, or follow me on LinkedIn and socials so that we can keep the conversation going. Now go unlock your next opportunity.